Hello and welcome back. So, got back from Scotland about a week and a half ago now. Being quite frank, my Scorpion Rally STRs are pretty cooked. I know a lot of you would be like, there's loads of life left in them, but they're pretty cooked. Today what I thought I'd do, run through a couple of pros and cons, how I found them, what the mileage was like on them, and would I buy them again. So stick around and stay tuned if you're interested. That's really YouTuber, isn't it? Before we get started, I finally clad the garage. Oh yeah, I'm so happy with it. If you know what the garage is like before, it's like a concrete poured garage. It looks really crap. Every time I'm filming in the garage, I watch my videos and I'm just like, that garage looks so crap. So I finally put my hands in my pocket, bought a load of cladding, spent quite a while doing it, clad the whole garage all the way along, put up my custom Bobber Thornton 100 print. If you don't know who they are, I'll put a link to their YouTube channel up in this corner. And then I've started also putting up all my tools and whatever down the end. Absolutely buzzing. Anyway, tyres. We were talking about tyres, weren't we? So, these are my Scorpion Rally STRs. As you'll see, it has a lovely embossed logo across it, just in case you didn't know. So, first of all, before I go into how I found them and stuff, what are they? So these are, I think they're marketed as Knobbly Enduro off and on-road tyres from Pirelli. If you watch the channel, you'll know that I do some green laning. If you don't know what green lanes are, they're essentially like fire roads. They're sort of unmaintained roads. I had the Michelin PR5s on before. They were okay, but they slipped quite a lot, so I just wanted a bit more grip. Now with the Tracer and with a lot of the other bikes like the Triumph, like Street Scrambler Ranges and the Husqvarna Spark Pillons, I think they are, the Vit Pillon or the Spark Pillon 401s, they've all got 17-inch rims. You cannot get most of the adventure-y 80/20 tyres in a 17-inch size. They're all 18, 20, 21-inch. So that limited my range by quite a lot. Out of all of the reviews I watched, these ones came out best. I'll be honest, the ones I really wanted were the Michelin, I think they're Anarchy Adventures, the new ones. I'll put a picture on screen somewhere just to show you what they are. But they don't do them in 17-inch, or they didn't at the time. I don't know whether they do now. I took the plunge and went for these. Now they look really cool. I think they look really chunky. I think they give the bike, although some people question it and go, oh, you put that Knobbly tyres on the Tracer, you're a moron. I think they look really cool. And I think they set the bike apart from some of the other ones. As I've said before, I had a couple of sets of Michelin PR5s. They were awesome tyres, like really, really awesome. I wholeheartedly recommend them. Got really good mileage out of them, they handle really well. So I was a little bit nervy going towards a set of tyres that weren't gonna be like that, if you know what I mean. I'm pretty confident on the bike, but I was a little bit worried. These, they're awesome. They're really, really good. When I first put them on, there's loads of feedback. They feel like a normal set of tyres. You don't get any vibration from it. These are quite chunky and they look quite beefy. So I thought I'm going to get vibration from the road. I thought I was going to get loads of tyre noise. Vibration wise, barely anything. Like there's not really much difference. Tyre noise, it's not loud, but you do notice when you go from a standard set of Rose tyres to something like these, you'll notice a bit of like a kind of noise, if that makes sense. So you do get that, but it's not loud. It's nothing you need to worry about. It's just something you need to get used to. But then also with all the other noises going on in your head, I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? You might have noticed this if you watched my Creed Cloverleaf tour a couple of weeks back. But one thing I did notice is the bike seems to sit at a slightly higher rev. I don't know whether that, like when you're sitting on the motorway, I mean. I don't know whether that's because I was fully laden and had quite a lot of weight on the bike and it had to sit at higher revs anyway. But I reckon it's probably 200 or 300 RPM higher than it would be with normal tyres. I don't know whether that's the bike. I don't know whether that's anything to do with where I'm riding or anything, but something I kind of noticed. One thing I've got to be clear about is I have not used these tyres completely how they are intended. I have used these mostly on the road. I've done some green laning, I've done some mud bocking stuff, but I've used them mostly on the road and I've used them for mostly riding like a bit of a tool, if I'm honest. I've done a weekend blast with my mates doing all the little windy roads. I did a 6.5 hour ride up to Scotland and then I did blasts around the Scotland Highlands. 2,000 miles I think it was, or 1,800 miles on them, and then we rode back. So definitely not completely intended for what they are. They handle really, really well. You can throw them into a corner, they hook up really well, they're not searching or anything like that. You can't feel any movement really in them in the corner any more than I normally do on this bike. Wet weather grip's really good. I think, again, I've never had any worry in the wet with them. In general, long story short, they give you loads of confidence. For a tyre that looks this knobbly and a tyre that looks this off-road heavy, they give you loads of confidence. Really, really good. One thing that isn't as great is they seem to take quite a while to warm up, and when they are in that warm-up period, they're quite squirmy. So if you try to lob it into a corner really hard and they're cold, you do get a little bit of like movement, if that makes sense. But I think it's just because obviously these are quite chunky knobs. I've said that a couple of times before, haven't I? These are quite chunky, so I think it just takes a while to get the heat into them. And also when they're new, it takes a little bit of time to wear off that sort of silicone-y cover that's always on tyres, but 50 miles in, you're golden. Where I live, I tend to do a lot of windy little back roads, primarily for interest. I get bored of sitting on like longer open roads. This bike's not powerful. This bike's not incredibly powerful, but is really torquey. So I get a lot of fun riding this on windy little back roads, anywhere between 30 and 70 mile an hour, whereas on the longer roads, you're sort of definitely not above that. And that's where this bike runs out of puff. So that's where I tend to ride my bike a lot of the time. The best thing that I found with these is when when you get that gravel patch in the middle of the road, it's all tarmac, but there's just a strip of gravel where some tractors or something has kicked up mud. You can ride over the centre of it with these and barely anything changes. You obviously know you've changed surface because of the feedback they give you, but you're planted. Up in Scotland, we were going along some windy roads. My dad was like actively avoiding those bits, taking corners wide to avoid those bits. I'll go into a corner and there'll be a gravel patch in the middle, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not leaning over really far, but I'm leant over, and there's a gravel patch in the middle of the road, and I can just go straight over it. And you get a bit of a like that, but that's it. It's awesome. That is probably the best selling thing about these tyres. It's just you can ride across basically anything on the road. You don't lose traction. You don't get the bike stepping out on you or anything. It is probably the main selling point for me. Going back to talking about the off-road side of things, how did I find them? As I said, I do mostly green lanes, so like your fire roads, your dusty sort of gravelly tracks. I found them really good. The rear wheel still spins up a bit, but comparing it to when I was doing it with the PR5s, like I've just got so much more traction in this, and the corners are so much better as well. I will say the front isn't as solid as I'd like it to be. So going into a corner off-road, you can feel the front sort of not stepping, but sort of slipping a little bit. It's loose gravel, so you're going to move a bit, but I'd like the front to hook up a bit more. However, comparing them to like a normal road tyre, it's night and day difference. So the only thing I wouldn't really advise taking them on is mud and sand. Now when I say mud, I mean the thick, wet mud. These gaps fill up quite quickly and clog up as the side ones, so you end up finding that you're riding with a slick, but the dry stuff is completely fine. One of the key things you've got to think is, what are you going to use these tyres for? If you're doing a lot of off-road, you're going in sand, you're going in deep mud, and you're not really doing a lot of spirited road riding, go and buy yourself something like a TKC 80 or any of the sort of actual off-road focused tyres. They will be so much better for you. If you're like me and you do mostly road focused riding, but every now and again when you see a green lane you want to go, I might just nip up there. These are like so good for. They're really, really good. So coming on to the negatives, as I mentioned before, they do squirm quite a lot when they're cold. If you're looking to do off-road and bits anyway, you're probably more experienced on the bike anyway, so it shouldn't faze you at all. I've never felt a lack of confidence in these tyres in corners, in the wet or anything, even when they're cold. It's just, yeah, they're kind of moving a little bit more at the moment, but 20 minutes in, you're completely fine. One other negative, if you're going to buy these tyres, get someone else to fit them. These sidewalls are harder than... What's the hardest thing in the world? Speaking a foreign language, breakups, divorce, losing a job, getting older. Getting these tyres on these rims, I've never, like, I don't sweat that much when I'm in the gym. Absolutely dripping sweat trying to get the sidewalls over into the rim. I've bent 2 sets of tyre levers trying to get them on, actually physically bent them. They are so difficult to get on. So yeah, get someone to fit them for you with an actual machine, because you will scuff your rim up, and if you don't do that, you'll lose skin on your hands and all sorts. Mileage is probably one of the main things that's been brought up as a negative across the board on the forums, all the other reviews. So when I bought these, I knew that the mileage was potentially going to be not that great. Some people were reporting like 3,000 or 4,000 miles and that's it, and they were completely cooked. If you watch my Michelin PR5 review video, I got about 11,500 miles out of the rear on those tyres. Now that was commuting, that was using my bike as I normally do, not really doing any off-road. But again, 75 horsepower bike, and I was a relatively new rider, so I wasn't caning it everywhere. The amount of comments where I had people calling me out, telling me I'm a liar for getting 11,500 miles out of a set, saying, how do you manage that? That's not possible, because they've got a 190 horsepower superbike and they find that they squirm in the corner and they only got 3,000 miles out of a rear tyre. Like, yes, because you've got over double the horsepower and you're using them as a track toy. But yeah, anyway, so mileage is going to differ massively based on what you're doing with the bike and what you're riding as well. Again, if you're riding a super tourer that weighs 240 kilos and has got 140 horsepower, you're probably going to go through these a lot quicker than I did. I put these on at just under 32,000 miles. I think it's 31,852 or something like that. I've got a picture on my phone somewhere. So currently the mileage on my bike is 38,100, so just over 6,000 miles out of the rear. The front's fine. Like the front, I reckon I could get at least another 3,000 miles out of. The rear, you probably see in the video anyway, from your angle, but they're quite squared off. There's still a little bit of tread left in them. I reckon I could probably get another 500 miles out of them, maybe 1,000 if I wasn't riding like a dick. But yeah, 6,000 to 7,000 miles I reckon is relatively normal, if you're not riding like a moron and if you don't have a super tourer. So final point, would I buy these again? 100%. Absolutely 100% I would buy these again. They've blown me away with their road performance. They give me the option of the sort of small amount of off-road I do. They're not ludicrously expensive. They're about the same kind of cost as a lot of the middle range tyres anyway. They look awesome, and the downfalls of them, like the squirming and stuff like that, if you can't handle a little bit of squirming when they're cold, I don't think you should necessarily be looking at off-road tyres. Don't shoot me for saying that, but my opinion. I should just get a banner that says my opinion across the bottom every single time. So there's my 6,000 mile synopsis on the Pirelli Scorpion Rally STRs. If you've got any questions, as per usual, stick them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.